using the LCP tracker system.
Employers can find the mandatory site poster for prevailing wage on our website, as well as the prevailing wage clarification document. If you have a new payroll staff or questions about the process for payroll reporting, don't hesitate to ask us. Our analysts are happy to help.
Our awareness-first approach helps avoid underpayments in the long run. Jeffrey Garcia and my Denver labor team work hard every day to help businesses understand what they need to do to follow the law. When businesses are in compliance, everybody wins. Find more frequently asked questions about the city wage laws at denvergov.org/Denver Auditor, and follow our Denver Labor page on Facebook to catch our weekly Wages Wednesday live sessions. We do trainings on many different aspects of each of the wage laws and are happy to take questions live in English and Spanish. Well, that's it for this episode of Ask the Auditor. If you have a question, submit it to auditor@denvergov.org, and maybe your question will be the next question we answer on the next episode of Ask the Auditor.
Welcome to the Safety, Housing, Education, and Homelessness Committee of Denver City Council. The Safety, Housing, Education, and Homelessness Committee begins now.
Good morning. Welcome to the Safety, Housing, Education, and Homelessness Committee of the Denver City Council. I am your chair, Robin Kniech, an at-large member of the Denver City Council. Happy day after Election Day here in the city and county of Denver. We continue to count votes, 65,000-ish. Our Denver election workers are so very appreciated. They were out in snow and sleet in all kinds of conditions collecting ballots yesterday. They were up late at night. We so appreciate them. Public servants doing their job to protect the integrity of the vote. We thank the voters who turned out, many of them between 5 and 7 p.m., but every vote counts. Thank you very much. And to all of the candidates, some of whom's races may be decided in this first round, others who will be up again on June 6th in runoff elections. None of that will be decided for at least later today, 2 p.m., the next results. But we know that our democracy is thriving when people are turning out, so thank you to all. We do have some business before this committee today, and I want to start with introductions of our colleagues. And do we have anyone online yet? We do, so let's start with our online introductions first, please.
Hi, good morning, Madam Chair. Kevin Flynn, Southwest Denver's District 2.
With that, we'll move to chambers.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Stacy Gilmore, District 11.
Good morning, Paul Cashman, South Denver, District 6.
Good morning, Jamie Torres, District 3.
All right, with that, I will ask our presenters to come forward, introduce yourselves, and tell us about the contract you're bringing forward today.
Good morning, Council President, Committee Chair, and members of the Council. My name is Scott Happ. I'm the major currently overseeing the current Denver Sheriff's Department RFP process. I directed and oversaw the food service program for the entirety of 2022, and I've recently turned over those responsibilities to my partner, Major Kevin Groening, who's present today. Today, I'd like to put before you our support for request on a $25 million contract to Trinity Food Services for food services starting July 1st of 2023 and ending on 12/31 of 2026. One of the things I'd like to point out at the beginning is the difference in contracts. Our prior contract, or current contract, was a $9 million contract. This one is a $25 million contract, which is what I get most of the questions about. I'd like to present to the council that the original contract was $9 million for 2 years. This will be $25 million for 3.5 years. Over the last 2 years, the consumer price index has gone up 12.5%. according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics. We've also seen food prices in general dramatically increase, from vegetables from a low of 5% to dairy products to an increase of 21%. Some other factors that contribute to the $25 million amount is the inmate population under the current contract was bid when we had an average daily population of about 1,380. Now we run about 1,700 inmates, which is related to a cost of meals originally of $2.04. With this contract, meals have gone up to about $3.50. I want to give you a basic overview of food services as they exist today. Food services encompasses 3 facilities: the Denver Detention Center, the Denver County Jail, and most recently, the Community Corrections Impact Center, which is located next to the Denver County Jail. Meal preparation involves 1,700 inmates eating 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Each of those meals, there's about 200 special diets, and then there's about 400 staff on a daily basis that could potentially be eating in staff-supported facilities. The model currently used is a hybrid staffing model. It's about 85% contractor vendor staff and about 15% DSD staff that were retained when we switched from an in-house program to a contractor program. Those staff are grandfathered into the program, and they can stay in their position as long as they want. Should they choose to leave the organization or the city, the vendor is responsible for filling that vacant position. Nutritional and dietary needs, we follow a strict regimen. Meals are served, those in custody meet dietary guidelines developed by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services in conjunction with the USDA. Meals are targeted toward a caloric count based on a female or a male diet. And then the vendor has specific dietitians that address dietary needs for routine meals as well as special meals, vegan, low sodium, kosher, and such. Quality control is important, and we wanted to make sure that the recommended vendor, Trinity Food Services, maintains our current standards that we expect. Daily inspections will be conducted by the vendor's kitchen manager at the beginning of each shift. This will ensure that equipment is in proper order, there aren't any safety violations or any sanitary issues. The vendor's food director will also be required to inspect the kitchens on a weekly basis. We also utilize a hazard analysis, critical control points, and various food safety plans, to monitor any type of biological, chemical, or physical hazard issues. We want to make sure that raw materials are handled appropriately and that the end product is delivered to those in custody in a safe manner. DSD oversight for food services consists of a DSD food services, which is overseen by Major Bruning currently, prior myself. Day-to-day food service operations is overseen by a supervisor who acts as the kitchen manager and liaison with the vendor. DSD convenes regular meetings with the vendors to address any issues and to improve operational efficiency. And scheduled and unscheduled inspections take place on a regular basis by the Denver Department of Public Health. Denver food establishment regulations are enforced, and as I mentioned before, we maintain the hazard analysis critical control point plans to make sure we're meeting city requirements. Further on oversight for food services, we hold ourselves accountable to the American Corrections Association standards as well as National Commission on Corrections Healthcare. These 2 standards are verified on a rotating basis by independent auditors that come into the facilities and take samples of paperwork and documentation to make sure we're upholding our end of the agreement. Any complaints that arise, individuals in custody can file a grievance at any time, which is our basic paper format for reporting an issue. They can do this to any aspect of food services. Any exigent issues are handled immediately by staff. They can be reported to a deputy in the pod, or if we get a grievance that has a particularly concerning issue, we handle those immediately. But any routine issues that are reported on a grievance, the vendor has up to 30 days by contract to address that issue. Staff dining issues in either of our 2 dining facilities for staff are addressed through the chain of command. They just report that to their supervisor, and then we address the concerns. So the main catalyst for us going out to RFP to find a new food service provider is basically due to the challenges that I'm about to mention to you. Under staffing, we've had sustainable staffing issues. We've had emergency staffing issues, which actually related to or required us at one point last year to come up with an emergency inmate work crew to supply a labor force to the county jail kitchens to make sure our staff was, our inmates or those in our custody were fed. That only happened for 1 week, but we still maintain that plan in case we have to use it under emergency circumstances. Other staffing issues we've been challenged with, it's just high turnover of vendor staff. It's hard across the food service industry for them to get qualified individuals in the door. They've had an issue with keeping them employed and keeping them in the building, which contributes to that sustainable staffing issue. They've also had a lot of high turnover with supervision and management staff, which just doesn't bring a whole lot of consistency to the food service operation when you're trying to learn how to live up to somebody's new expectations. When we're talking about food quality, there's been issues with non-adherence to approved menus. Menus are approved by the head of food services on a regular basis. We expect our vendor to hold themselves to that standard. With the staffing issues and some supply issues, sometimes substitutions have had to be made in food service menus, which were not acceptable by the DSD. Portion size versus calorie count was another challenge we dealt with. Those in our custody may have been served what the calorie count required, but the portion size was small. It wouldn't have satisfied somebody and got them to the next meal. So we're key on the calorie count, but we also want to make sure we're serving those in our custody enough food to keep them satisfied to the next meal. Unappetizing food selections is an issue, both in our staff kitchens, our dining areas, and in those in our custody areas. And then under operations, failure to address DSD concerns. We have regular meetings with the vendors to make sure that they know what is of concern to us, but because of high turnover of management and supervision staff, sometimes these didn't get addressed as fast as we would like them to. Lack of consistency with vendor senior leadership, just that high turnover. I believe last year we had 3 different food service directors working for our vendor, which each time one of them comes in, we have to build that relationship, clarify our expectations, and then that just confusion sets in. And then untrained vendor staff. The current vendor likes to promote within, which is great. We love when they promote people within, but we felt that they were promoting people and putting them in positions and not to that person's fault. They weren't providing them the training and the skills necessary to perform the job, where we had issues with not being trained on how much food to order, when to order it, keeping a 2-week supply, and other issues like that. So just an overview of the process that we went out for. There was a vendor pool of 175 vendors that were invited to bid. We received 2 submittal bids back from those 175 invitations. An assessment panel was created. I led that panel. It was comprised of line personnel and executive staff. And the vendor assessment consisted of a review of a scope of work or responses, in-person interviews with the 2 vendors that submitted the packets, samples of food so we could actually see what it is they were proposing to serve to our inmate population as well as our staff that work in the facilities. The panel then got together, we addressed any inconsistencies with scoring, and then we awarded the winning vendor, our recommendation, and then contract negotiations began, which have brought us here today. So in the new contract, some of the things that are specifically in the scope of work and the verbiage was put into place to address some of the challenges that I talked about earlier. So under staffing, this new Trinity Food Services is going to have a strategic staffing plan to hire well-qualified applicants. They're going to have a formalized emergency staffing plan. One of the good things about their formalized emergency staffing plan is they have a total of 13 other jurisdictions in the state of Colorado that they currently provide services to, and 5 of those are on the Front Range. Part of their emergency staffing plan is they are going to cross-train their employees at other facilities and will pre-clear them to work at DSD facilities. So if for some reason we have a critical shortage of personnel, they can immediately move personnel from some of their other facilities to our facilities to make sure we have the staffing necessary to provide the services to our clientele. The immediate counties in our area include Weld, Adams, Larimer, El Paso, and Pueblo. Meals under food quality, let me back up a little bit. In addition to staffing, Trinity Food Services has programs to provide employment engagement and retention. They're just not going to hire an employee and kind of just let them do their job. They're going to make sure that they provide opportunities for them to improve their skills, keep them engaged, and they truly want to promote qualified employees from within. If we're looking at food quality, Adherence to approved menus is going to be expected. The vendor understands that there'll be few expectations to this, and they've agreed to comply with that requirement. Meals will meet not only the daily caloric requirements, but they will be of a sufficient size to be satisfying to those in our custody. And then the recipes that they will utilize will use quality foods that meet the nutrition requirements to make up for challenges we've had with appealing or tasty meal options that we've been serving. Under operations, they're gonna, like I mentioned earlier, they're gonna have multifaceted ongoing team member training, regularly scheduled meetings, on-site inspections for their leaders. So Trinity senior leaders will be coming to our facilities on a regular basis. So it won't be as much as me or my partner, Major Bruning, telling them what our issues are over the phone. They'll be there to see and experience the issues we're having so we can get them addressed in a timely fashion. And then they also have a regional warehouse located in the Denver area. They are part of the Keefe Group, but that means we'll have a reliable and sustainable source of supplying products to our facilities. So hopefully when we have other issues, heaven forbid another pandemic or some other sort of issue, we'll be able to maintain our food supply and we can continue operations at our facilities. Here's a sample menu I'd like to offer to you. This is, while it's geared towards the Denver Sheriff's Department, this is a menu that was served at their Adams County facility, which they run services for. You can see that it's quite varied and appealing. They have chili mac, tetrazzini, macaroni and cheese, which is always a fan favorite. And these, like I mentioned earlier, these menus will be pre-approved by DSD personnel and they will be accountable for following these. So one of the things I like most about Trinity Food Services is they have a proven training and education program for those in our custody. They call it the Ascend Culinary Arts Program. So with them coming in, we fully expect them to start a program using our standalone bakery that we have at the county jail. And they'll provide an innovative food service vocational program designed to prepare those in our custody for employment outside of the system when they get released. This program is unique because it can be offered to both male and female. So our bakery is separate from our standard kitchen. So depending on the rotation, we could offer this program to females in our custody, which traditionally, in some circumstances, have been unrepresented in the area of programming. The program focuses on responsibility, behavior, cultivating competence, and teaching skills that will prepare those in our custody to leave and be solid members of the food service or hospitality industry. That concludes my presentation. If anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
We do have several council members in the queue. First off, President Torres.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Major Happ. Just a few questions. You mentioned the increases in the cost and the reasons for that. This isn't the same vendor as the current contract? Okay.
No, the current vendor did not offer a bid.
They did not. Okay, got it. Thank you. And then slide 3 for the daily meal preparation includes. Is that that's like a point in time of capacity, or what actual meals are provided?
So 1,700 represents an average daily population. So that's 1,700 meals, all facilities combined for one meal. So actually breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you would times that by 3.
Okay, it seemed a little low. Yeah. Okay. And then staff, that's staff who are receiving meals, not preparing meals.
Correct.
Okay.
That's the potential for staff. I mean, they can eat in our office or mess if they like, or they can bring their own meal, but the potential is to feed 400 a day.
Okay, got it. And then the only other question that I have is how the vendor handles food waste, recycling, composting, anything like that.
I do not have the answer to that right now, ma'am, but I can get that.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next up, Councilman Cashman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sir, thank you for the presentation. I guess what struck me is 175 vendors and only 2 responses. What would you attribute that to?
I have Beth with me here today, and she could probably speak to that. Beth?
Elizabeth Hughes, General Services Purchasing. I was the procurement analyst for this RFP. And the main reason is that this is really a niche market. There's not that many vendors out there. I did try to cast a wide net on the commodity codes to be used to see if there were any vendors out there, but most of the vendors did not do food services in this particular area.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all.
Next, I have Councilman Flynn online.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Captain, I have a few questions. Councilman Cashman asked the first one that I had. Overall, could you give us your thoughts on how the current vendor performed compared to the prior method where we were doing this in-house? Were we experiencing more issues? You outlined some of them in the presentation, but did we have better performance when we did this in-house versus contracting it out?
I'm going to call up my partner, Major Bruning. I've only been with the city about 14 months, so I never experienced what it was like without the vendor, but Major Bruning can speak to that.
Thank you.
So in answering your question, Councilman, the issue that I think that we had prior was we had ample workforce because of who we were housing and how we were housing these individuals. With the changes in our schedules and who we are choosing now to keep into custody, we no longer have that workforce. So we have a lot of constraints on if we were trying to go back to the older method. At this time, we cannot do that because we do not have the workforce. As far as
are you
issues,
saying? I'm sorry. Are you saying that we didn't? Did we consider going back to doing it in-house versus contracting it out, or did we simply just put out the new RFP? Was it not a consideration to go back to the in-house?
At this time, even if we tried to consider that, sir, we don't have the workforce that we could do that.
Okay, thank you. The other question I have is what are the protocols for security when the vendor's employees come in and out of the facility? How do we handle screening, badging, screening when they come in, that sort of thing?
So anybody that the vendor would like to hire, they have to submit a name to us, and those persons are vetted through background checks, checks of criminal history to make sure there's no issues. Once they're vetted by the organization, they're required to attend our NEO training. So they understand all the rules and everything they'll be expected to follow within the facility. Once they've been cleared through that process on a daily basis, they come into a central screening point. Depending on which facility they come to, they're required to lock up any contraband items. They're advised of and reminded of any items that aren't allowed into the facility. Their identities are checked versus ID cards, and then they're issued credentials to enter the facilities, and then they enter the facilities and conduct their work.
Okay, thank you. Have we had issues with, excuse me, with security and our current vendor with their employees?
Nothing that we wouldn't see on a regular basis. People sometimes forget. So every once in a while, they'll forget to lock their cell phone in the locker, and they'll walk through the security checkpoint. But no, we haven't had any willful violations, and we haven't had any serious violations. But as I mentioned before, I wasn't here when it was in-house services, but I've been in the business for 32 years. And I think that's just something you'll see across the board. I have no doubt that when DSD fully controlled food service operations, there were still some of those minor issues.
Thank you. Where is Trinity based? What state are they based in?
Albuquerque, New Mexico. So, well, actually, let me, I know one of their offices is in Albuquerque. But let me reference this here real quick. Beth, do you know offhand where they're based out of?
Thank you. And it would also be helpful maybe before this comes to the floor, if we could have a more profile of Trinity, where they operate, how many states they operate, what other cities do they operate in. That'd be very helpful.
Okay.
Thank you. One last question. The OCD in me wants to know why for lunch the inmates have PC beverage, but for dinner they have beverage PC. Is that the same thing? And what is PC?
Let me jump forward to that slide. Are you seeing that on the menu, sir?
Yes. Let me go back to that. for lunch, every day for lunch, it's PC beverage. And then every day for dinner, it's beverage PC. So just curious what that means.
I'll be honest with you, I don't know what that means, sir, but I'll find out.
Okay.
I mean, I know what we serve. It's going to be some sort of juice-based drink that we provide, or could be possibly milk. But I'll find out exactly what PC beverage means.
Thank you. My vote doesn't hinge on that answer, but I'm just curious because, like I said, my
never know what's a
OCD
deal
wants.
breaker, sir. So I'll find out for you.
Well, let's hope not. Thank you, Major.
I believe those are the only questions we have, colleagues. We have let me just confirm, switching screens. We have a mover, Council President Torres, a seconder, Councilmember Gilmore. Do we need any roll call vote on this matter? All right, with that, the Denver Sheriff's Department motion on Bill 23-353 will move this contract to the full council for a vote. And we have several items on consent, and this this committee has no further items, so our meeting will be adjourned. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Wash and things that I just didn't think I would ever use. So I put my own together. It's just cotton swabs, it's band